My name is Scott Smith. Doing this talk here on building gender diverse and equal engineering teams. I currently work for an educational technology startup called Agreed, and head of the engineering team there. Before that, I had also had other engineering teams, and past companies had a lot of challenges with building diverse teams. I had a situation where most of the engineers were all men, and it was really hard to really help build a more diverse team. And after joining Agreed and heading up the engineering team for the past year, I've learned a lot of techniques and in situations and environments that make that much more feasible. So really wanted to kind of just come here and share, with all of you, my experiences with, things that I've done and things that the company's done, things that kind of enable that opportunity to build much more diverse teams, with everyone here. So kind of starting off is just to, I think it's a great quote. I've heard a few people say this before, is that the fight for gender equality in tech isn't really a war, a man versus woman war. It's not even a man versus man or woman versus man. It's just it's something that should be done, and there's steps that we all can take to help make it happen. When I was getting ready to come out here to Denver and do this talk, I was talking to my dad about it, and he was joking around but kind of playing devil's advocate of just giving me a hard time with well, why would you want to do that, or what's the point? Is that, are you now being biased in the opposite direction? Why not just look at the best candidate that comes into the company, be the person that you hire? And they are valid questions, and they're questions I think that a lot of people ask. It's not really about just hiring people to meet a quota. It's more about actions you can take to make the company more appealing to everybody, to do things to make the jobs themselves and pay more equitable. It's fostering a community, a culture, and principles within the company that are appealing to everyone across the board and not just geared to one demographic. So just kind of a quick overview of the agenda. Kind of 7 main topics. I'm actually going to approach it from kind of sort of a little bit different direction, where starting with the job offer and working through the process, almost kind of backwards, what you would normally do when hiring someone, and we'll end up with with how the culture and leadership kind of helps power and enables a lot of these things that we'll talk about. So the first thing is about the job offer itself. There's a term, kind of, you can read about this, there's a lot of really good articles on it. It's about anchoring bias. And what the premise there is that anchoring itself is the concept of we as humans, when we see a number, or in this case, maybe a salary that someone has, we will anchor to that number. And what can happen is, in general, studies have shown that women are paid less than men in the industry. I've witnessed this firsthand myself, especially hiring and talking to people that I'm working on job offers with. And the challenge here is that to understand that this anchoring bias can occur. And what the biggest challenge there that happens is that when you're looking to make a job offer for someone, and an engineer comes in and say they are currently making, let's say, $100,000, whereas a male counterpart may be making, say, $130,000. When you're looking to make a job offer to those two individuals, maybe you're going to offer a job to both of them. In a lot of companies, it's mostly geared towards, well, let's get let's do the best for the company and pay the least amount possible. But the problem there is that you're really continuing that bias, and you're continuing that unequal pay, and to really set up a company in an environment that's equitable, it really should be about paying for the role, not really paying for the person. Sorry, I need to move to some of these slides. I'm talking ahead of my slides, but and some of the ways you can do that is by, instead of just looking at what someone currently makes and maybe offering them a job at maybe 5% higher than they're currently making, it's more about setting up more of a salary matrix that defines, here at this company, people with this level of experience, that are going to do these certain types of jobs are paid this much money. And you basically set that up throughout the entire, different levels of the position. And what happens then is, so instead of taking what someone's currently making and offering just a little bit more money, you're going to look at the actual position, what the pay is supposed to be, and you'll essentially be much more structured, much more controlled on the actual amount that you offer that person. And it applies really to both hiring and promoting. So hiring is very important because you really want to work to really kind of destroy that the inequity that's out there in pay. Just by taking someone who is making, say, 30%, 40% less than the male counterpart, bringing them equal, one, it's great for the person. Two, it's great for their career because now they're at a much higher level. If they want to move up in their career or go to another company, you kind of set that baseline to a much more fair level. I found this quote interesting that women hired by Google in 2015 received a 30% bigger salary increase than men. Now that's across all of Google. So I decided to look at Degree just in 2016 and the hiring that I did. And for women engineers that I hired, they received a 200% bigger salary increase than men, which is huge. I mean that's a huge amount of huge difference in salary equity. These are people who have the same number of years experience, doing the same exact job, same level of seniority. Really the only difference is that it was really just a male versus female difference there in terms of what people were getting paid. And men in general were about 30 to 40% higher than most of the women that I talked to when doing job offers. All right, so after, or before the job offer itself, are some steps you can take when interviewing. In general, and this goes across the board, I think, for both men and women, but to really avoid whiteboard interviews, kind of like the play. I think probably most engineers here probably don't like them. I don't know, raise your hand if you like whiteboard interviews. Okay, good too. Glad you're honest. In general, what they do is they tend to privilege confidence over knowledge. Someone getting up there in front of people on a whiteboard in an environment that they don't work in. I mean, who here, when you're asked to work on a new feature, goes up on a whiteboard with a pen and writes out the feature? You're not doing that, right? You're on your laptop, you're in your environment, you're using the tooling that you're familiar with in a much more normal situation. In general, they just don't, and it's not really a good test for people because, again, it's not the situation in which that person can be working in. But some alternatives you can do are, first one are code reviews. So I really like this idea here. Sorry about that. So for code reviews, what you can do is have some code that you use consistently in all your interviews, and sit down with somebody and have them go over that code. Ask them to kind of just walk through it, explain what it does. They can explain things like what's wrong with it or what works, how does it work. You can have them ask like how would you improve this code? What changes would you make? Can they optimize it? And so what you're doing is you're really be able to have a dialogue with the person. You can hear their thought process, understand how they look at code. Are they able to understand it? Can they optimize it? And in doing so, you're not only are you having that really great dialogue, you're also doing it in a way that's going to be consistent with things they would actually do on the job. Right? There's code reviews, peer reviews are a great way of one getting helping to mentor and onboard new hires. It's a good way to help ensure that your code quality is high, and it works great for interviewing as well. The next thing you can do is sorry. This is really interesting. Sorry about that. My phone and my laptop are off by one slide, so this should be interesting. Let me start this real quick. Sorry about that. That's not going to work. I'm very confused. No, it's still up. All right. Well, we'll figure it out. Go back. So coding exercises. These are also really helpful to do in an interview. A couple options. One is, when they're in doing the interview, you can put together a fairly small coding exercise, maybe something that takes 30 minutes to an hour, but let them know they're going to do it so they can bring in their laptop with their tooling, the environment that they're familiar with. Let them go off on their own time. Use whatever tools that are necessary, internet access so they can reference documents, and then come back. You can review the code, and review the code kind of in a way in which you did the code review, right? Have them explain it, talk through why they did what they did. The other thing is to give a little bit longer tests. I don't personally like giving people work that would be something that's going to help the company. It's got to be something small enough that you're not going to waste their time, but valuable enough that you can get a good idea of their coding skills. And something maybe you give them a few days or a week or however much time they want to take to do it. And then again, come back and review that and analyze it to see how well the code is. Is it structured well? Good commenting, good use of frameworks, tooling, existing functionality. All right, and then finally is if you can, it's really good to bring in female interviewers. So if you are interviewing women, don't just have men interview. One, you want to show that kind of like back up your words, right? That we care about equality. But if women are coming in and it's just a bunch of men interviewing them, you're not really conveying that in your actions. At the same time, it gives them a chance to really talk to that person and understand what is it like to work with the company, what is it like as a female engineer, what do they like the best, what don't they like, and they just get a different perspective. And finally is to keep interviews structured. I prefer to do it this way, and I think it works really well as opposed to just non-structured. By structured, I mean you've got a set of questions that you ask, and you ask the same ones every single time, as opposed to just being ad hoc. And the reason is a lot of times when it's ad hoc is you'll end up with people that you're more similar with, that you have similar interests, and you relate to, and you connect with more. And what happens is that kind of will bias your view of that person. You'll go down tangents talking about things that you may be interested in together. They may not be even applicable to the job, and kind of sway your view of that person in the interview. And by keeping them structured, using the same exact questions, you can then easily compare people's answers with each other. You have a better way of measuring and kind of better metrics to really pick the best candidate in the pool. All right. So before interviewing, you basically need to get candidates into the candidate pool. Essentially, if you're not getting female applicants, the problem lies with you, with your company, with your culture, maybe your job description, or where perhaps you're posting your jobs, because you really should be. I noticed that the company I worked before, we didn't get a lot of female applicants, but our situation was the problem. We were in a remote town up like in the mountains of California, and we didn't allow remote work. The company was dominated by men. I think there was across the company like maybe one or two women that worked there, and it just wasn't a conducive environment to bring in female candidates. So really, if that's something you see happening, it's really helpful to look inside and see what can we change, what can we do differently, what can we do better to handle that. So the key here is, and this kind of goes back to the very beginning where I was saying it's not about just about bias the other way where you're just hiring people to fill a quota. And it's not even like we have a pool of candidates we have to hire from this pool X number of women. It's more about broadening the funnel. So this is the key place where you can actively work to get a lot more women into your pool, into the applicant pool, and ways to do this are things like I would suggest working with external recruiters. That can be really challenging and have their own problems. But what we do at Degreed is we have an internal recruiter who works for the company. I work very closely with him, and it's fantastic. He goes out to women's groups, he goes out on LinkedIn, does all kinds of stuff to help just talk about Degreed, get interest, get more people applying to help increase the funnel. of candidates that we have coming in. So instead of just having 95% male candidates and 5% women, our goal is to shoot for at least 50-50 in the candidate pool. So then you have a much greater chance of hiring whomever it is, but you're still going to hire the best candidate, but at least you have a diverse candidate pool to pick from. And some, just a small list of ways in which you can recruit. Things that we've done is reach out to and participate in women's groups. There's a lot out there now with women in code and girls in code, and there's been a lot of recent activity in this area. Recently posted our job on the Women in Code site, and it's been great. I think we had probably about 40 or 50 applicants within just a couple weeks, and of that, I'd say about 5 to 10 have come into the interview pool, and actually have a couple right now that are looking to be very strong candidates. Hopefully, actually will go on to be hired here in the next couple of weeks. Hiring recruiter experience in recruiting female applicants, or at the very least, someone that can help reach out to women in the industry. Sponsoring events, underwriting scholarships, mentoring our internship program is something that we're starting to work on as well. Number 6 is an interesting one, expanding your networks. In general, if you look at your social networks, they'll tend to be very much like you, people who are similar to you. It's really important, if that's where you're going to be recruiting from, that you work really hard to expand your social circles and your social networks so that you can get a lot more diverse people coming into your company and applying. And always be recruiting. Even if you don't have open jobs, don't ever stop recruiting. Especially if hiring is it's going to be critical for your business. You should never stop recruiting. You want that funnel coming in continuously. And then just in general, be out there, be active in the community, go and talk at conferences. All right, and finally on recruiting, I think is important is that metrics matter. So it's really important to track the number of applicants you have. What percentage are male, which percentage are female, so so you can measure. Okay, we made this change we're going to go reach out to this group. Did that help increase our percentages? Track those that you interview and those that you hire. Because if you're making changes and trying to improve and you're not measuring it, it's going to be really hard to tell what's working and what's not working. All right, so the next thing here is the job description. The purpose of the job description is to persuade someone to apply, not scare them off. I mean, I think it's a simple statement, but I've been guilty of this in the past where I put together job descriptions at previous companies like, you need to have 10 years experience in this and be fantastic in this skill, and thinking, well, then we'll get the best people. But all that's doing is just putting off people, especially people who may not have explicitly those skills, but have skills that are related or have the aptitude to learn and grow on the job. So it's a really important thing to, when you're doing your job descriptions, think about what really matters, right? Do you want to scare people away, or do you want people to apply? Worst case, they apply, you look at their resume and you don't feel there's a fit. I think that's a lot better than scaring someone off that could have been a great fit for your company. So next thing I'm going to go through is just some research I've done. Read up quite a bit on. There's a lot of polls that were done on women to see what do they like in job descriptions and what don't they like. So this is kind of I kind of pulled some of these together. And actually, the exercise I did in putting this together about 9 or 10 months ago is what I used to update our job description. Which once I did see an increase in the number of female applicants applying for jobs in security. So saying things like X plus years experience solving something, instead of that, just experience solving certain types of problems. So instead of putting a hard number, just being more general, because people know if they're experienced in doing something or not. So just kind of putting an arbitrary number of 5 years, 10 years, but what does that really mean? Certain people can learn a skill and be proficient and excellent at it within 1 year, whereas someone might take 3 years or 5 years. So putting a hard number on there is pretty arbitrary, and we'll just put off candidates from applying. Job titles are really important. Hackers, that's an interesting one. Tell a story on that one. Rockstars, ninjas, and it's a bit cliche, but in general, what happened here with hackers was an interesting article out there. The company Buffer, I don't know if you use Buffer, they were a pretty cool company, very transparent, very open about everything. A lot of people want to work there, but they found that their applicants were heavily dominated by men as well. They couldn't figure out why. They did a lot of research and they went out and talked to groups. And the challenge, the biggest thing was that they had we're hiring hackers as opposed to software developers. And for them, it was kind of an innocent thing. The hacker just meant someone that gets in there and just makes things happen. Just make solutions, get code out, do whatever needs to be done. But the connotation of that was negative and ended up kind of biasing their job description and not getting as many female candidates. So when they switched it over to, I think they just switched over to just software developer, that change alone saw a much larger increase of female applicants for their jobs. So instead of that, using just job titles as developer, engineer, architect, more specifically what someone's been actually doing, as opposed to buzzwords. Aggressive terms, like dominant, strong, competitive. These are words that we use. I mean, I've used them. Strong skills of this. We want to be a dominant force in the industry. They tend to push people away as well, and instead use terms like eager, friendly, flexible, diverse. If you think about it, someone being flexible, diverse, eager, friendly, you're going to get the same things you're wanting using terms like dominant, strong, competitive. They're just much more positive words as opposed to aggressive, negative terms. Then strong emphasis on specific languages or technologies. Again, this goes back to you want more people to apply. And saying things like we have to have someone with 10 years of experience in C++. It's pretty specific. You're really narrowing down the candidate pool. You may want people with C++ experience, but at the same time, someone who has experience with C or maybe Rust or some other language may be very capable of coming on and getting spun up on a new language or new technology, especially if they have a lot of experience. We can show experience having changed skills that they've used in languages over years. So instead, emphasize on things like curiosity, flexibility, your ability to learn, work with others. If you think about it, when you hire someone, you're looking for, say, someone with experience in Ruby 5 years. Well, and you get that person who they've done it for 5 years, but they don't really show ability to learn, curiosity, a growth mindset. Well, you've got that person with 5 years experience who's not going to go anywhere, right? So a lot of times, really, you really want to hire for the position you're in right now. You want to hire for the position you want them to be going into the future. And in doing so, it's looking for people who show the ability to learn, ability to grow, the drive to do more, as opposed to those who just specifically have a skill right now. Things like valuing working hard, being the best, work hard, play hard, elite, the top, again, are much more aggressive kind of competitive terms that research shows that women don't really like within job description, and that the likelihood of applying will be less, as opposed to having things, again, value learning, offering professional development, curiosity, and initiative. So I think this is the last one, is emphasis on degrees, and that's not in there, honestly, because of what degree it's doing. So our mission is to make all learning count, and that degrees are valuable, but they're not everything. But research actually shows that putting in degrees, putting a request for GitHub profiles, Dribble profiles, or other sites are negative, because in general those sites tend to be dominated by men. I didn't do anything. Okay, there we go. They tend to be dominated by men, and that jobs that request these things again have a much lower applicant pool of female candidates. And again, I've been guilty of this. I've done this in the past. I thought I want to see GitHub profiles, not so much Dribble, not to the hiring designers, but there's a lot of value there as well. So instead, again, emphasize on experience, your skills, eagerness to grow and learn, which are much more valuable and will serve them much better. All right, so the work environment. the work environment is extremely important. I mean, these are all very valuable in my experience, but when talking with candidates, asking them, well, what about degree are you most interested in? And then talking about job offer, and I asked the question of, what's most important to you in a job offer? I would find that probably, I'd say 80% or more women would answer flexibility. And flexibility is what they were really interested in. Our work environment that we have, and I'll talk with some other points that we provide, are really the #1 reason that we get women applying at degree for the engineering team. And flexibility is kind of a broad term. It can be a bit loaded. So when you have flexibility, it really has to be core to the principles of the company, core to the culture, and truly flexible. Not, yeah, we're flexible, you need to be in the office, but you can be in the office between those hours. Or flexibility is really that, I'm going to get the job done and I'm going to do it however I can do it. I work, for a few hours in the morning and the rest during the middle of the night, and that's how the person does it. And that's something that we promote and we allow. And it's really important for all the candidates that are moving on. And on top of that is, allowing remote work. Again, it's not just, you can work from home, once a week. We do full remote work. And then unlimited PTO. Those three things combined really, for us, has produced an environment where people, for anybody, it's pretty awesome. You get as much time as you want, you can work when you want, you get to work wherever you want. It's pretty awesome. But for us and for people I've talked to, a lot of the women applying have concerns about their life later. They're going to have kids and what that's going to do for their career. They don't want to have to pick between their kids and their job. And having these three benefits, along with the next one I'll talk about, has made degree extremely interesting. I've had a lot of candidates where we've reached out to through recruiting, and they told me that normally I say no to recruiters. When I looked at degree, looked at what it was like to work there, I really wanted to apply, and I really loved to learn more and potentially work for you. So bringing those things into your company, or bringing those up with your leadership, can be key if you're running into these kind of problems on hiring. And the last one is it's important to have explicit maternity and paternity leave policies. At degree, it's pretty amazing. It's unlimited, so it's really if you have a child, you can take off as much time as you want to be with that child. So it's not tied to any Family Medical Leave Act or anything specific. You don't have to use up PTO that you have and then go on getting a percentage of your salary. It's full salary for as long as you want. And again, that's going to be a huge benefit. It has been really helpful for us as well with hiring. And finally, the fifth one is on-the-job learning. That's been really important as well. A lot of people I talk to say that, I have kids, my life is so busy. I love work, I love development. I still want to grow my skills, but I just don't have the time, my own time to do that. And what we do is we allow everyone to spend an hour of their workday, whatever that is, learning. And we also provide financial means for people to learn, that they can spend that money on whatever they want to learn. So again, I kind of already went over this, but essentially this is kind of what we have at Degree. This is what has worked really, really well for us. Number-wise right now on the engineering team is up around 29% women to men, which is actually much higher than the industry. We obviously would love to get to 50-50. I don't know if that's possible in terms because the workforce is not 50-50. There is a smaller percentage of men, or a smaller percentage of women to men engineers across the board. So pushing for 50-50, I think would then take us into the area where we are picking one candidate over the other just because of their gender. But these type of things I think have been key for us to be able to build our engineering team up to what it is today. Just a couple stories from people at Degree. Kat's an interesting one. She's actually employee number 3. And I talked to her about what was her experience moving on, and she said essentially that those benefits I talked about were the only reason that she was able to join Degree. She has kids. She's had a very busy life. And having those benefits allow her to join the degree. She's done extremely well, and as of today, she's now the chief product officer. So, it's a really important thing to think about how valuable those few things are. And at the same time, it also makes people very loyal. That was one thing she brought up, is that providing these benefits are very generous. They really let people have a very good life and not necessarily have your work get in the way of your life. And that is, what's been really important for her. That those things empowered her to do this and be loyal and work really hard and really, obviously work up to a very important position in the company. And one more is Jihei. Jihei's she's great. She's one of our back-end developers on our integrations team, and I talked to her as well. I just like to hear there's people's stories, like what about degree made it great for you to come on. Her story was that she started out young, started playing computers. I think she was junior high, went to college, absolutely loves development. But for her, she was concerned about what's going to happen, when I get married. She wanted to have kids, and she was concerned that she's going to have to pick between her work and her family. And for a while, she was having to pick between those. She worked at a company. It wasn't flexible. She couldn't work remote. She had to have her kids, being watched all day long. She went and worked at the office, and when she learned about the degree, she loved what we offered. And now for her, it lets her spend the time in the morning with her kids. They go to like preschool, I think, and then she works like evenings or late at night to get the job done. So for her, it's fantastic because she gets to have the best of both worlds. She gets to be with her family, but at the same time have a job and do a great job. And she does a fantastic job. And it doesn't matter that she's not still working, 9 to 5. She does it when she needs to. She does it from home. Takes off the time she needs to take care of family things or vacation or whatever is going on. You can actually have a great life and not have to pick between her personal life and her career. Okay, so the next thing is culture. This little thing here is, don't. It's essentially saying, like, don't change the person, change the culture. If things aren't working well, it's not anyone's fault. You don't want to change someone to make them fit within your culture. You need to change the culture to fit everybody there and make it a culture that everyone can work within. Principles, degree, we've got, actually we have 12 core principles that we work off of. I thought these 3 were worth kind of bringing up and talking about how they relate to, obviously relate to this talk, equality, empathy, and candor. So for equality, what we do is, we really do seek in teams, our practices and process equality across the board. We do strive for 50-50 in all teams. And then for salary, we do approach either matrix by skill level or a universal compensation. And again, so having that core principle is what enables all of the other things I've talked about to happen. The fact that we do seek equality in all things, and is what helps and allows me to come in and say to my boss, I've got this candidate, they're making 30-40% less than what this job would pay for. I'm going to make them, and they only ask for, say, 5% more than they're making. I'm going to offer what we have this job set at. And the response is, yeah, do it. That's what we want to do. So in a lot of places, that would be a really hard sell to offer someone, say, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 more in some cases for a salary versus what they're currently making. When you could have gotten it for a lot less. It's not actually the most fair or equitable thing to do. Empathy. This is another really good one. I think it's assuming the best in each other, sacrifice on behalf of each other, assume innocence in all things, and truly care about others. I think this is, broadly this is great just as a work environment, period. But at the same time, I think again, by having this concept of really being empathetic to others, you're going to work hard to not have bias and not to treat others unfairly by either by pay or how people have to work, or if they have to come into the office and the things that they have to give up. And finally is candor. We really do encourage the tough conversations. We don't talk in hypotheticals. So coach learn from mistakes, and we don't let injustices slide. What's nice about this is that people are comfortable and are really encouraged to be honest and open with everybody in the company, to not let things be bottled up, or not tell the CEO something that they see going on wrong, or for engineers to call me out on something. By pushing that, I think it helps to, again, create a very fair and equitable environment to work in, where people feel comfortable that they have a voice, that they can share their concerns, and that the company will listen and either change or grow or take advantage of those opportunities to do better. And then it's really important too, and this is something we do, is to share like the current state with the company. And right now we get a weekly email with a full breakdown of what are our diversity numbers in the company. Diversity on gender and ethnicity as well. And we have certain goals we're trying to get to, but again, getting it out there, getting it forefront in everyone's face. Everyone knows where we are. We know we work harder. We know where we're falling short, or where it's working. It's broken down by company, by team, by region. It's got across the board, and it's just really good to see that and see how well the company's doing. And again, it makes it very clear that it's very important for the company, and all that, I think really, as the final point, really comes from leadership. It's a kind of a top-down problem. So having a leadership, or the founders of, if it's a startup, or the executive team, have to be behind this 100%, because there's so many aspects of work environment, job offers, recruiting, interviewing, that things that you may want to do within your company, but if you don't have support from the leadership, it's going to be really hard to do it. So it really is a top-down problem, because you really need that support from the top to enable you and empower you to do the things that need to be done. So in general, great leadership enables really support for equal pay, quality recruiting programs, an appealing work environment, and a proper culture. And I've kind of talked through a lot of those. The last thing I think is really important is to really get that your first female hire early on to kind of set the stage. If you decide a couple years down the road that we really need to work on diversity or diversity or gender equality, and you've got a company of 50 people and everyone's a male in that company, it's going to be really hard to sell. It's going to be an environment that might be less appealing to women to join. It kind of sets the stage of, well, why is the company like this? What's the culture like to have enabled this? Why is it so imbalanced? So really getting that first person hired early on to kind of present through is absolutely critical. And then just kind of recap. Really, these are all the points I went over: the job offer, interviewing, recruiting, job description, work environment, culture, and leadership. I think are all extremely critical to be able to build diverse teams, period, across an entire company, but really, especially on engineering teams where it's even more challenging to do that, or has been challenging for a lot of companies. All right, that's it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so with the unlimited PTO bit,
yes.
I'm curious on your thinking with kind of two sides of it. Like when someone, like if it's ever perceived that someone's either using the PTO, or on the alternative flip side, when there's sort of an unspoken rule that since it's unlimited, that might create a more competitive environment where no one's taking enough PTO. So I'm just curious to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, no, those are very valid points. But what we've done is, first of all, we kind of, and this is for every new hire, it's very much communicated that it really is unlimited. We don't track how much time you take off, which means that we also aren't tracking how much time you're not taking off. So we really push that people, we want them to take the time off, to have that personal time to do what they need to do or want to do. At the same time, we've never said no to anyone asking for time off. And I mean, just recently we had 2 employees. It's actually it's kind of an interesting match. We have a developer and a QA engineer that are getting married on the team. So for them, it was like something came up. They were going to get married in a few months. They had last minute thing. They wanted to go to Hawaii for 3 weeks. It was a week off, and we still said yes, even though it put us in a bind. We scrambled to make that happen. So again, it's putting it's basically like following through with what you say. I think it's really important too with those programs to one, for leadership to take that time off and show, it's not just, oh, look at, my boss never takes any time off, and that's going to make it so people don't want to take off. I take off lots of time, so I take full advantage of it myself. May as well, right? It's a great benefit. At the same time, with people on my team, I tell them, it's a small thing, but I say, I don't want you to ask for time off, but more of just tell me when you're taking time off, so I can plan for it. So it's kind of just a little bit of a mind shift. And we work really hard for people to understand that it really is unlimited. We really want you to take the time off, and for us, it's worked really well.
So on the question of kind of like the learning education, when you get like an hour a day, you have a lot of people that save that time up and like, okay, I'm gonna take like a week to like go hack a project or go to a conference, or is it mostly like we want to stick within a day?
Stick within an hour a day,
Okay.
In most cases. And things fluctuate. There's times when we're really busy, and someone may not be able to do that because they choose to. And then there's times when things are more slow. Might be a couple hours one day, 1 hour one day. I don't track it. Again, I push it and I want them to do it. But again, I don't have oversight into what they are doing. It's up to them to do it. But for sprints and for cycles and for deliverables and working with other people, that would be problematic to kind of save it up.
Yeah.
Since you don't track the time, how much would you guess people on average take annually with PTO?
Scott, can you repeat the question?
Oh, sure. So you're saying, because we don't track the PTO, I would just look, what would I guess the average that people take off is? I don't know. I can pick myself, I'd say probably 5-6 weeks, so it's pretty high. But I wouldn't even be able to guess. I try not to track, because by tracking and kind of doing that, in a way I would start seeing who's taking more time off, and I don't really want to get to that point. I just want to keep it very, obscure in a way.
These benefits sound great. Do you have any openings for men right now?
Yes. And yes, you can email me there, scott@degree.com. We are hiring. We're hiring a lot. So shoot me an email if you're interested in knowing more. Maybe put it back there.
Have you heard of that sort of like a fully blind interview where people who screen the candidate never meet or see or know their gender or ethnicity, and they even mask the voice?
I have heard about some of that, yeah. I haven't actively done that. I think, for what we're doing so far, I think it's sort of working really well, just looking at our metrics and our numbers. But I think if you were to see that you get an equal number of female and male applicants, but then your hiring is heavily dominated by men, it's probably something that you may want to look at, right? It's to help maybe take out some of that bias that might be happening in the interview process. Right here, yeah.
Just curious, how many people you have in your company?
Company size is about 130 right now, and the engineering QA team is 32.
So when you were talking about changing like the tone and vocabulary of job postings and seeing a higher number of female applicants, what were the metrics showing like for male applicants from the previously posted kind of jobs to like the updated ones? Like, do you see more or less the same of male applicants?
Yeah, what we saw was a lot more female applicants, but the numbers went up as well. So it wasn't like a drop for male candidates. Like, yeah, we didn't. That would be something to be concerned about, right? Is you do that and then you skew it the other way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in general, just our overall applicants went up.
So do you feel like you would change like all job postings to be more like that neutral tone?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think so. Yeah.
I was asked if any of these principles apply to work when you're looking at a trying to increase racial diversity in addition to gender. Have you done research into that, or is that a bit of a harder area just because?
I couldn't hear the first part, sorry, can you say it again?
Applying some of this stuff, or have you done research into increasing racial diversity in addition to gender diversity?
Yeah, so it's like using it for racial diversity, kind of like what you're talking about, gender. The way we're approaching that right now is we try to focus on what we have two offices. We have a San Francisco office and a Salt Lake City office. And so for that, we try to stick with the demographics of the area in our hiring and shoot for that. Just because we do hire people in those areas and we do allow remote, and people work remotely within the area. And so we do strive at least in those areas to hit the demographics that are there. So, I mean, as you can guess, in Salt Lake City, it's very, there's a lot of, Caucasian, in those areas. But our San Francisco office is much more diverse and does kind of match what the area represents.
In the area where you talked about getting leadership and management on board with helping to increase gender diversity, do you have any advice for individual contributors, either regular developers or senior devs, on how to actually get management on board if management doesn't see increasing gender diversity as a priority for the team?
Yeah, and I think that's a big challenge. I mean, I am lucky right away because I'm at a company that already really supports that. But I think it's about metrics, it's about numbers, it's about I think sharing why it should be done, right? That'd be the first step is why even do this? What are the benefits? What does that provide for us? And then it's then showing when you do this, here are all the benefits of the company, and here's what happens with employees. And I think you can show it across multiple levels of loyalty, of people staying at the company longer, working harder. As well. So I think it's really about making the case of why you should do it. Yeah.
Just to build off of that question, if a lot of what was suggested were policy type changes, unlimited PTO or whatever the case might be. So if those policies are fairly set within the company, is there like a recommended way to try and encourage a little more flexibility as opposed to being so rigid, which might chase off or reduce gender diversity?
So you're saying like kind of small steps, or how you would?
Yeah. So like if you wanted to implement better policy in order to bring in more people, how would you pitch that kind of thing? Like how? Because it's a lot more difficult to go to your manager and be like, well,
we should have unlimited PTO.
And it's not necessarily, I want it because of this, but just like, if the company's very rigid in their ways and very set and strict and everything, how do you encourage more flexibility?
Right. And I think it's a similar answer. It's starting with why. I mean, why do you want that? And then if you can at least argue that case, and if there's some openness to it, it might be small steps. Let's offer this as a benefit here. Maybe it's just remote work half the time. Let's make that clear on our website, on our job descriptions, and then let's measure it over a while and see if it changes the metrics.
Before these kind of sentiments start becoming more mainstream, I had a VP that would allow us kind of under the table time off, and we would call it 5 Club because it was popular back then. No clock's not 5 Club. So he would, kind of take care of us for working hard. I in turn kind of took that to my team, and it's been kind of grassroots actually.
So kind of just take it as yourself in your leadership role, enable those with your team to kind of keep it quiet.
Yeah.
And I love the Fight Club.
Nice. All right, thanks everyone.